into the imaginary gallery. It is TJ, your host. We're moving on down the lane with the Sex and the Abusive Person series, still referencing Lundy Bancroft's wonderful book, Why Does He Do That? Inside the Minds of Angry and Controlling Men, Women, and Children. The next part that he explores is a question. What about sex that involves games, force, or violence? He asks you, is all sex play that involves adopting roles of domination or force abusive, even if it's consensual? This is a highly controversial inquiry among heterosexuals as well as the lesbians and the gays. Bancroft's opinion matches mine, which the answer is no, but he states that the important key words are consensual and play. And then he goes into an example about a couple of any kind that may engage in lovemaking, which involves force, play, and games. The couple needs to have a mutually established signal or code word, which means really stop. And that signal must be respected. If one partner gives the stop signal and the force doesn't immediately cease, Bancroft says that what's happening is sexual assault, not lovemaking. He gives us another critical point. The meaning of what happens during sexual play is determined by the context of the relationship. If partners are consistently kind to one another and respectful in regular everyday life, they can probably share this kind of lovemaking without making either person feel disgraced, unsafe, or degraded. But in an abusive relationship, these lines are way too blurry. It's a stretch to call any sensual contact fully consensual when it takes place in the atmosphere of abuse. The lady is always having to gauge whether her partner will react abusively if she says no to a particular act, so her choices rarely feel truly free. Many abusive people get a thrill out of taking sex play too far, where it isn't play anymore and causes genuine pain or fear. When the lady tells him later that she felt assaulted or raped, he may respond disparagingly,
"We always played games like that. Get off of it."
When she tries to explain why it felt so bad, he doesn't want to listen, mostly because he knows it was not consensual this time, and he got a thrill out of it. When you're being mistreated in a relationship, stay away from forced scenarios during lovemaking, even if the times when your partner does stay within the limits are fun. Other times it's not going to be fun at all. If you can say no to those games without running the risk of being attacked, then do so, he says. These kinds of games can only be played safely in a non-abusive relationship. Now keep in mind, I'm paraphrasing out of Lundy Bancroft's book. Doesn't necessarily mean I agree with everything he's saying, which normally if I don't, I'll share that. I've been involved in an abusive relationship before when there was such behaviors, which I found to be fun regardless. But of course it didn't last, so maybe he's right as far as the long run goes. The next section here is sex and double standards. The double standards that are endemic to abusers can stand out sharply in the sexual arena. The most obvious involves outside relationships. The abusive person who has frequent affairs is often the same one who interrogates the partner about her movements and social contacts, and goes ballistic when he has the slightest inkling of a suspicion that she might be developing any kind of connection, sensual, sexual, or otherwise, to another man. He may enjoy looking over other women from head to toe as he and his partner walk down the street, but if she so much as gives a sidelong glance at a boy, he screams at her and calls her a whore. A popular justification for this double standard is that men have an inherent need to be with many different women, whereas women want to be monogamous. Over the years, Bancroft said he's had several clients use such socio-biological arguments with him, saying that from a genetic standpoint, males have reason to desire copulation with as many different females as possible, while females succeed best in evolutionary terms if they choose their partners carefully. You might call this the human beings are basically baboons argument. In reality, there are plenty of examples of stable monogamy in nature. But these arguments are ultimately beside the point. There is simply no excuse for double standards or for any other aspect of abuse. In parentheses, Bancroft tells us that he sometimes asks his clients, when they attempt to lead him down this conversation style, "Do you cook your meat before you eat it?" When they answer that of course they do, he says, "Well, isn't that awfully unnatural? I've never seen any other animal doing such a crazy thing." Human behavior can only be measured by human standards. Bancroft's clients sometimes pressure their partners with the myth that men can suffer physical pain or damage if they become aroused and they're not satisfied. That's high school. Of course, Bancroft said he's never heard them claim that this risk applies also to unsatisfied ladies. A fair number of Bancroft's clients have imposed an additional double standard according to which the lady is expected to consent to lovemaking at any time that the man's in the mood, but she's never supposed to initiate the act herself. As one partner of a client said to him, "If I'm in the mood, I've got to make sure not to let it show too much, because he shuts it off real fast if it's coming from me." Isn't that lovely? Nothing could better illustrate the way in which an abusive person's approach to sex reflects his overall orientation toward partner and control. It wants to run the couple's love life, and it doesn't want her needs interfering with his fantasy in any way, Barbie doll. He prefers the two-dimensional women in the magazines, the videos, the websites of sex, who never come to him asking for anything. And then we move on to sex and vulnerability. For most ladies, and for most non-abusive men as well, sex is an area of emotional vulnerability. An abusive person's charm during the better periods of a relationship can lead the partner to open up to him or her deeply about personal and potentially painful issues. Sexual relations then add an additional layer of vulnerability as the abusive person learns about the lady's sexual likes and dislikes and about her previous experiences. She may confide in him about some victimization she suffered earlier in life, or about a period of promiscuity she went through at one time, or about hang-ups or difficulties she's had in the past. The abusive man tends to make mental notes of all this personal information. At another phase in the relationship, when things turn ugly, guess what? The partner may find that her vulnerabilities are being thrown smack dab into her face, and that's a cluster B example. During the love bombing, during the idealization, they're collecting every little piece of information about you, and when it's something that you're embarrassed about, they'll be like, "Oh, that's okay, that's okay." But then once you find out the monster they really are, when the mask falls off, then those things come back to haunt you. Like if you said, "I feel like I'm a little obese." "Oh, honey, your body's perfect. It's never been obese." And then later, when the mask falls, you know you do look a little obese. You look overweight. It's like it changes and it's sick. If, for example, she revealed to the man early she sometimes has difficulty reaching the big O, he now may be throwing words in her face like, "You're frigid," or "You're a cold fish." If she shared any discomfort regarding sex, he will now call her uptight, so repressed, especially when she doesn't happen to like what he likes. To the abusive person, sexual liberation means the freedom to do whatever he wants. If she told him about suffering child sexual abuse or previous experience of violence or rape, he will now characterize her as being permanently damaged by those violations or use her past to discredit any of her current grievances.
"That's why you think I don't treat you well, because you were abused once before." Well, it's not me.
I've heard stuff like that. Sick. In some of Bancroft's cases, the abusive person has even spread private sexual information about the partner in public settings, including her sources of shame, thereby humiliating her and making it very difficult for her to continue to be around such people. Other clients of Bancroft's have been careless or insensitive regarding the risk of pregnancy or of communicating STDs, increasing the lady's sense of violation. The shock to a lady of having her deepest vulnerabilities thrown back in her face by someone she has loved and trusted can cause a burning pain unlike any other. This is intimate psychological cruelty in one of the worst forms. See my videos on CPTSD for more on that subject.
I am the Narcopath. I'm here to give you a few more confessions. I'm sure you've always wondered what happened on that vacation that you took me to Mexico. I figured enough time has passed I can tell you safely what happened. I know you were confused when we first checked into our hotel. Shortly after doing so, we were putting our suitcases away, and we heard a knock at the door. Some Hispanic boy.
Glad you don't know Spanish. He was talking to me because, face it, I have fans all over the world. He happened to recognize me. I can't help that.
And I could tell that you were head over heels in love with me. Who isn't? I spoke to him for quite a while. I know you asked later what we were talking about, and I made it really simple. I just said that he thought I was a Jones, and I wasn't a Jones, even though I never said the word Jones.
And in fact, I even went into the hall with him. The fact was, he was soliciting me for, you know what. He wanted a piece of my Virginia. Again, who doesn't? I couldn't tell you any of this because I needed your money. I needed the bank account that I knew you had. So I couldn't tell any of this. That's why I went in the hall. But the truth is, he wanted to organize a rendezvous with me. And remember that afternoon? I disappeared for hours. And I made up a story, and you didn't even believe the story. So I got stuck in a record store and was looking at all the records. I went from A to Z, and by the time I realized it was over at Z, I was 3 hours, 4 hours later.
Well, honey, I don't think it takes too much for you to know what we were doing.
I went to his little cabana, I spread my thighs, and I gave him what he wanted. He recognized me from the USA, and he wanted a piece of the Narcopath, Virginia, and he got it. Now, I know I came back to the room later, and you said, "Why is your hair all messed up? Why is your makeup smeared?" I just told you, honey, it was hot walking here. I wiped my face by accident. I know you smelled another guy's perfume in my hair, and I just told you I stopped by Sephora and sprayed some because I thought I had some B.O. And you bought all that. Well, the truth is, I'm an international lover. I've got partners all over the world, and there's no way I would ever be stuck with one, regardless what I told you. I often tell my targets that I need one person and one person forever. But that's not for me. That's intended for them. So they feel that they have to do the same, and that's how I do my magic. My goal is for me to have at least 1,000 different lovers in 1 year, and for my partner to have only one, which is me. That's the way I roll, because I am the Narcopath. You ain't. Oh.
And I know you probably have questions about what exactly was done. Well, I told him in the hallway.
In Mexico, that you were just my brother. You're very protective of me. If we were going to get together, it had to be secret and discreet. He was all for it. I don't know what else you want me to say. It didn't mean anything, but I went to his little room. He gave me the address, and I'm glad you didn't check my pockets because you would have seen it. He told me how beautiful I was. Bonita was the word he used. And I told him how hot he was. But that's none of your business. The point is, we had a lovely vacation. I got to see Mexico. I could never have done it on my own. And I got to have my Virginia serviced by several people. In fact, after him, his roommate wanted a piece of me, and I took them both at the same time. But I had both inside, and I kind of hoped I'd become pregnant because I'd never know which one it was, or it could have been a mixture of both. But it didn't happen, so...
And one final confession. I know that you knew what I was up to when I was lying to your friends, and you knew the truth, but nobody else did but you and I.
Let me give you a little secret. I noticed a few times you tried to challenge me, making up something, by lying about something, which I could tell right off the bat what you were up to because I am such a liar myself. So when I told you I thought you were lying, I knew it wouldn't be long before you confessed. You see, you've got something I ain't got. You have some kind of a conscience or some kind of feeling of remorse that I've never ever had? Which means I can lie to anybody at any time about anything and never feel whatever it is you feel when you feel obligated to confess that you lied. I see people all the time lying with a perfect lie, and then what do? They break down and they confess, and I think, what is wrong with these people? They clearly have something wrong with them that I don't have. If I murdered your daughter and I was seen at the scene and somebody asked me about it, I would keep a straight face and say, "Oh no, I noticed her in the pool drowning and I came running to help her." I wouldn't dare act like you when you tried to lie and got caught. You acted nervous and shivered and changed your story and trembled and said, I am a professional liar. If I want something, I get it. If I need you to believe something, I don't stray from the story ever. If you uncover evidence to indicate that I'm not telling the truth, I just discount your evidence. And I stick to the story. You could learn a few things from me if you wanted, but you're too much of a pussy willow. You and that conscience of yours. I ain't got one. And I'll do or say